All right, folks, last but obviously not least by any means, this last session is on the journey to automated software licensing. So, we didn't want to stick Aviat with the last slot of the day, but it's the slot that kind of ties everything together in a way, because in the end, that's what we're all here for, trying to figure out how you put this whole journey together. Patty Cavers from Aviat heads up the enterprise software practice for Aviat, and she's here to take us through the journey that Aviat's been on. Thank you so much, Patty.
Thank you. I will try to keep you a little bit awake. So a little bit about me and Aviat. I am the Director of Enterprise Applications for Aviat Networks. And Aviat's a telecom infrastructure provider with worldwide basis for customers and delivery of telecommunications equipment, but we're headquartered here in the Bay Area. A little about me, I do have a degree in physics, and I got that from my joy of understanding how things work, and I think it's the perfect background for working in business because everybody believes that nothing works. So my entire career has been fixing issues and problems from planning management to business process engineering and now managing the IT applications team. So it's been a joy and a journey, and as part of that, Gemalto has helped us fix some of the things that didn't work for us in our licensing solutions as we had it, and I'll talk you through our path and the decisions we made and kind of where we're at, and where we see Aviat's journey for licensing and where we want to head, and I'd like to hear from you if some of you have conquered some of the challenges that we don't see a path to yet. Okay? And I did add the safe harbor in case I say those future things. I reserve the right to change my mind. All right. The first speaker of the day said all of this much better than me. But the challenge for Aviat is this constant balance of should we monetize software or not. And as a company, we've been separating software from hardware since about 2006, and a lot of that initial discussion was around engineering and managing the profitability, what we're doing on the software development side versus hardware, and we rolled out a new product where we really shifted it to be entirely modular. So hardware shifted to a modular basis, and the software did as well in terms of all the features, all the capacity for the product, splitting out, letting the customer buy what they needed when they needed it. And that drove us the ideal. Again, more revenue streams from what you want, and allowing us to have a revenue stream that didn't require hardware change, which is what we had everything prior to that. And we've continued that model as we've rolled new products. And as we go forward, we also see that challenge on the revenue recognition side, that our processes of how we fulfill things needs to now maintain hardware versus software differentiation. So at the end of the day, I can do the reporting, this is what we achieved on software versus hardware, and so that process is also impacted by this decision. But on the customer side, the customer's view of the world is quite simply, I want what I want, when I want it, and I would be happy to just pay for one price, get everything I need, and don't bother me again. That would be their ideal. But as I move from monetizing software, I actually end up putting more work on the customer for them to now make that decision or to manage that software themselves. So that work for them to fulfill instead of me is one, and then every time I split things to new SKUs, again, it's a process, systems, people to manage those through. So there's a complexity that comes with it. How do we get simple on the customer side and still achieve those revenue pipelines that we want? So a little bit about Aviat. Telecom infrastructure providers, we build high-capacity, point-to-point digital microwave radios. They're used in all of those 5G networks. That's us. We're your service providers, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile on one side. Your other major customers are utilities. They'll use it to put in and connect their power plants together so that they have their own network and they can manage the flux on the power plants without being interrupted by anybody else. A lot of city, state, local governments use it to manage all their local services, your 911 networks and things like that, where you need high reliability, high uptime, and they're in complete control of it. You also have a lot of other use cases. Your oil and gas rigs, communications out to those rigs. High-frequency trading. The radios are, what are you getting in 5G? Low latency. It drives communications to support those. School systems will use them to connect all the buildings on campus. Transportation systems, connecting all the different sites of your subway systems or whatever. Lots of different use cases. Again, we're worldwide. A lot of heavy customers here in the United States, as well as all of those Africa, Asia, developing countries. It's easier to put in a microwave radio link than it is to put in fiber. Okay, so it's a quick way to get communications into those areas. So what's the challenge? If you imagine, I will talk future about the steady state and the normal process, and let's talk about the exceptions. Your people are really great at planning. They get it right all the time. So they want this license upgrade for a particular site, and the installer goes out to that site because it's tied to the specific serial number of the unit that's there. He's on the top of a mountain. He's out in remote Africa, 40, 100 miles from the local city. Really safe path to get there. Okay? It's the wrong serial number. He now needs a different upgrade in order to add additional capacity to that link or a new feature that he wanted to do. So it's back to some other local place who has to then contact Aviat with the new serial number, get the new upgrade, go back out to the site, and then load that license onto the radio. That's if the radio is not connected to the internet in some way, which quite often it's not. This takes days. This is not fast. If it's urgent, it's not happening. How do we fix this for them? If we can fix the exceptions, now my steady state also is fixed. Efficient for the customer, efficient for us. So Aviat licensing complexities, and this is before we implemented Gemalto. We had a lot of legacy technical debt. We had two main product lines where we had software separate from hardware and that we were managing. Okay? Each product line had its own servers, its own engineer who designed it, its own internal interfaces, external interfaces, interfaces into the ERP, interfaces into the manufacturing systems, all managed entirely independently. And the logic to do each one of those diverged for how we manage things in one versus the other. Okay, and the same rule would be implemented two different ways. So on the product offerings, we started out with the Eclipse product back in about 2006. Everything was split out, over 500 different individual product SKUs for the license features and capacities. Now start bundling them, get some customer-specific ones, you're into the thousands. CTR comes along. A few years later, we've simplified. There's only 181. Still not simple. When you get to the internal complexities, for us to do a change in the software impacting licensing, we start to implement bundling. We start to implement configurator, different things. It took an army of people to get in the room and first remember all the systems and pieces, because it doesn't change very often. And then you have to manage it through the engineering team, who really doesn't want to deal with this. It should be production, but they won't give it up. And so the IT team manages the interface. The manufacturing and engineering is managing the factory. They all need to coordinate on how it's going to implement. No one person knows anything outside of their own world, much less how they impact somebody else. So it takes us weeks to understand it and then roll out and test any change. It's not efficient and it needs to change. But in the same way you heard from other groups, nobody wants to own it. Nobody is motivated enough to change, keep walking the same path. So in that world, that's the IT side, the back-end side. The process side is manual as can be. We start with the customer calling us up. I need an order, they contact sales. Here's my serial number for the upgrade. They go in, they enter the quote in the quoting system, which becomes the order and a complex booking process, all manual. Shifts to create the manual license upgrade, then email that license upgrade to the customer, come back, fulfill it in Oracle, our ERP system, and then invoice the customer. Every single step is manual in some way. There's not a single automation. Okay? If you're shipping equipment, same manual process, except for now you're programming a flash card and packaging that flash card and running it through your shipping processes. Again, 100% manual for something that's small and simple and should fly out the door. Oops. So why change? About a year and a half ago, a new product line started, our WTM 4000. Engineering PLM come and say, Patty, we need a new license server, we need to fix it, you need to support this for rolling out the new product. So no problem. What are your requirements? So we started talking about it. The new WTM 4000 is supposed to be a low-cost, all-outdoor radio. In the first pictures, the current radios have some portion outdoors and another portion indoors. So again, by getting it to all outdoor, get rid of the flash card, we've now simplified the physical parts that we need to manage internally and the physical parts that the customer's managing in their warehouses and deploying. We want to make it simple to order. We want to order it online with our Aviat store. It was for us a rollout and an initiation of our Aviat store to get some of the more channel customers and other customers to Aviat and buying things in an easy way. We want no-touch license delivery. From the time they order to the time it's invoiced, hands off. That was the goal. And we want simpler part number structure. The WTM has less than 15 parts from a software standpoint. And we want still have the option to configure it in our factories. If the customer wants to do it themselves, we should support it. If they want us to take care of it, we should support it. And there should be no confusion in the middle that two people are consuming the same entitlement. Okay? So that's the goal. Fewer parts, simpler for the customer, speed to delivery, do it fast, remove the complexity. So how did we handle that? From Aviat's perspective, they actually started good by the time that came to me in IT. There was a corporate vision of where do we want to go with licensing. There was a product management decision of where they wanted to go with this product. And then we helped them close that gap on the last piece, which was the generators, the portals, and the interface to customers, the detailed requirements for that and where they wanted to be. So we had specs at each level, okay? And the summary of these specs is what I handed to Gemalto and a couple other suppliers and our internal guys and said, tell me what you can do. And that was the basis of our comparison. So the number one message across every aspect is it has to be easy to use. It has to be easy for Aviat, easy for the customers, easy to integrate into engineering. From the vision side, it needs to be adaptable to our future. We know we can see a path to pay for use, pay-as-you-go type of structures, potential subscriptions. We manage a NOC center for our customers where we manage their networks for them. And if we can integrate the licensing through the network and manage the release of additional features and capacity, depends on what's going on in that network, and just charge the customer afterwards, we can remove that headache for them. Directionally, it makes sense. And we want the system that's going to help us get there if we can. We want fully automated delivery throughout. It needs to be accountable and profitable, but that also means it needs to be efficient to do that accounting in your systems from beginning to end. They had the product vision of where they wanted to go, but it also needed to be flexible and robust. We know things will change. We know we change our mind. We do it all the time. The system needs to be able to adjust with us when we need to correct course. From the product and solution standpoint, most of those carry over, but it starts to add some more requirements into that. We need to allow for not only our internal unknowns, but the unknowns from the customer standpoint. There are some data that we capture when we do major projects, major installations. We work with the customers on the full design of the network. We capture a lot of information in that process, and then the customer takes over from there. If we can present to that customer at the end of the day, here's the information about their licenses and where it's used on each one, they know more about their network. So we need to be able to put that information over there. If the customer doesn't know and they want to add it later, we need to allow for that. So there's some flexibility of non-standard information the customer might want to maintain around their licensing. We need simple offerings in terms of those product SKUs, but we also want to bundle them and mash them and have those processing through so that it's simpler for the customer. And when you get into the product side, we took it down to the level of all the security requirements, the ability to support both for the support of the licensing as well as the integration of that into the hardware. As we get into the generator side, the portals, the requirements hit more into the user interface requirements, the simple use for the customer, the integration with our Aviat cloud site. So again, as you heard in the last, one place for the customer to go. They have everything they need when they need to communicate with Aviat. Okay? And from that standpoint, we also want a full interface into our ERP and into those manufacturing systems so that it's hands-off for the processing. We know our customers have requirements on automation for bulk license entitlement, and we need a system that can handle that flexibility, and then all the reporting that comes around it. So lots of requirements. There was over 100, I think, across the 3 levels. So lots of things to go with. But at the end of the day, that was our main guide for where we wanted to end up. But we also knew that we didn't need all of that day one. We needed a system that's going to help us on the journey. So we got the team together. We went through the requirements and came back to management with a comparison of the different systems. And one of the other systems on the list, do we do it ourselves? When I first brought this question to the organization, my internal IT team says, why are we looking at other systems? This is easy. It'll only take us a couple weeks. I can have the new system up, no problem. Engineering says, yeah, no problem. We can use the same key. We're good to go. But IT, we want you to take it over afterwards. So they were happy to a degree, just doing it the same old way. Each system gets its own thing. But I challenged them, if I come back to you and these other requirements, pay as you go, integrating with the NOC Center, you're going to come back to me again and say, yeah, that's another development, and that one's another development, and that's another development. In the long term, I can either have you continue to do all these other things, or I can have you focused in another area. And so when we challenge the organization, what's our core competency? It's the top and the bottom. Our engineers' core competency is our product. Our engineers' core competency is not license servers. Okay? And from an IT standpoint, a marketing standpoint, and all those others, we understand what our customer wants, and we understand our Aviat complexities and how to manage those things, and we do it well. But the middle, we're not adding value when somebody else can hand us a platform that's going to do all of that for us, and we just integrate our pieces. And so it was an easy discussion then from a management team. The C-levels were clear. There's no reason for you to build it. We're buying. Which one? And so then it was just the review of the software providers from there. So where did we end up? There's a lot more green here. I can actually use that color now. So we're not fully automated, but this process actually shows you more where we have product and licensing coming through at the same time. Okay? So, and we still have the customer ordering online. They do order from our store. We have a simplified booking process when they order from the store that can be done in a matter of a few minutes versus the hours that an order coming through our quote side needs to be validated through. There's a decision if it's just the license only versus coming through with product. And the 2 pink boxes on the bottom, we did make a decision if you buy equipment with product, or sorry, equipment with the license, we won't invoice you for the license until we've actually shipped the product. So we wait. So eventually we'll automate those boxes, but currently they wait and order fulfillment clears it. We have a check in both cases to make sure that we have a valid EMS contact for our customers. Who's going to get the email? If I don't know who's getting the email at the end of the day, I can't start. But once that's done, it's fully automated. So once the holds are cleared, integration goes from Oracle across to EMS to create the entitlement. Confirmation comes back to Oracle, the entitlement's created. If there's a customer that needs to be set up, it's automatically set up if it's not there. From Oracle, we then email the customer. Here's your information for your site and your entitlement and your link. Go ahead and go out there and consume your entitlement whenever you want. Then the order line is fulfilled, rev rec occurs, and the invoice goes out. If it's coming with product as well, we have quite a bit of automation on our product side, of full automation on the procurement down to our contract manufacturer, which communicates everything for the license that they need to put on the radios, if that's the case. Same thing on the clearance of the EMS contacts, holds are released, entitlements are created. It's a manual step for product assembly and manual step for the license, but the manufacturing systems are fully integrated into EMS and back to ensure that the entitlement was created and consumed. And then right back through, when the product ships, it triggers the emails out to the customer. So the net result of this, the old process would take us days to implement from the time the customer called and said, I want an upgrade with a serial number. It could take a day or two. By the time it processes through, this can go in hours. So I've got a couple screenshots here of some of the customer interfaces. We did design the interfaces from the get-go, knowing that we wanted to enhance them with some of the bulk licensing and other things, the next step. So they took a little longer on the initial development to go ahead and roll out the custom interfaces to begin with, so that they were set there for the next round. Our Aviat Cloud interface, central entry point for most of the interfaces with the customer. It's very simple license creation when they want to consume an entitlement. Easy search pages to search the entitlements for what they need. More extensive reporting when they want to search off of custom fields. And the ability to manage their own license upgrades, to enter a serial number, see what licensing is already on a particular radio, and then add additional capacity, additional features to that particular radio. So what does it mean for Aviat? The biggest thing for us is our engineers are now focused on engineering Aviat products. They're not sidetracked with managing the licensing solution, which was a headache they wouldn't give up, but they didn't want to deal with. For us, the license key and the product offerings as we roll out new products is an easy thing for them to take up and integrate and do, and they're happy to do that part. On the IT side, IT manages all of the systems, all of the Gemalto administration, all of the interfaces. Manufacturing still manages the actual equipment within the manufacturing site, but the interfaces are all managed by IT. So for the change and the automation within from Oracle, the automation between the team, my team owns all of it. So they have one point to contact now to fix the majority of it, to process change through. From a platform standpoint, to roll out a new product, which the discussion is going on now, there's two main questions. What's your key? Engineering, talk to Gemalto, make sure you got the new key figured out. So long as they're good there on the technical side, it's into product line management to release their new part numbers. If they set up their new part SKUs with the right item type, the entire automation flows. So programmability with the API interfaces and structure that we have there, we know we have the structure to start automating from the NOC center, the network connectivity, the network management for the radios. We know we have the structure for pay-as-you-go usage. Once the business is ready to define that business case and what makes sense, we have the system there. We just need to refine the pieces around it. And from the general mindset of the organization, it's into that prioritization within the PLM and marketing teams to now understand where do they want to target and get back to us on here's where we're headed next. In the meantime, it's rolling out existing products in the existing structure. So what do our customers think? They're not happy. We took something, they used to call me up, I need a new upgrade, here's my serial number, this is what I want on it, take care of it, and they get an email back. Now they have to do the work. They have the flexibility, they have the improved lead time, but it's more steps, more actions on their part. Okay? Customer only wants what they want when they want it. They don't want the work either. So if they're buying new product, they can still have me take care of it for them. We can still configure, load the licenses in the factory if they let us know. But for the upgrades, they still have that process. I can make it as efficient as possible for them, but it's still something else for them to do. What are the competitors doing? Nobody's solved this yet. So if we can solve it, if we can it will differentiate ourselves to our customers if we can find a way for them to manage licensing without work and still have the adjustments, so you have the revenue models. If they need increased capacity on the radios, they need increased features, they can manage that. Where we're headed now, continuing the ruthless automation. Automations for the customers, I mentioned bulk licensing for them when they're doing large networks and they need to consume entitlements, allowing them to do 100 at a time to load the data in the system versus one at a time is big for them. Ensuring that we continue to drive management to identify their long-term direction and tell us when they're ready to go there and the specifics around that so we can start moving forward. But most importantly, keeping our engineer and our IT teams focused on what our core is so that we can manage and do the other projects we need to be doing. So question time. So when I mention cloud-based licensing here, I'm asking from the standpoint of where the equipment is connecting to the cloud and the equipment is self-managing its upgrades of licensing and you're handing a bill to the customer at the end of the day. Is anybody taking their networks to that level? So nobody here has solved the problem either. Okay. Maybe an easier one. Oh, go back. Do I need to go forward or back? There we go. If you're yes, I'd like to talk to you afterwards. We're good? All right, how are you solving the customer dissatisfaction with that additional transaction, with the transition they need to do to software licensing? Where you go from doing it for them to now they're managing more of that transaction on their own. Do you not sell the licensing separate? Are software features sold separate but maybe bundled with the hardware to where it's perceived as one? Is it all sold for one price? We call those super licenses. Get it all under $1. Or is licensing automation product connects to the cloud for the licensing with no user interaction? That's similar to the last question. Or pay as you go. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.
So, oh, yeah, questions? We already have one.
Same question is to Liam from Extreme. When you said the build versus buy decision, you had to convince that your IT and engineering departments don't provide the solution for you. Was it a qualitative decision, or did you have to provide hard financial data to say it's a better decision to buy?
The IT team was easy because it was the guys that work for me. And I showed them their to-do list of what I'd rather have them working on. From the engineering team, it was similar. They know it's not their core. Just that slide at that level showing to our C-level organization of where we wanted to spend our internal resources and where we thought our internal resources should be focused, everybody bought in for us. Now, in parallel to that, we also had 100 requirements for what we wanted from a system. And we were able to take that back to them and show them, here's the different suppliers we've looked at. This is how we rank them in terms of the pros and the cons and benefits of one versus the other. And it was a big discussion at the C-level organization in terms of, we can just have our guys do it for the internal. The total cost internally was lower than going with the third-party system. Okay, it was. And even for our implementation with Gemalto, we didn't rely on a lot of services from Gemalto because I had two strengths within the organization to do it. And it worked fine for us to do that because we've done it in the past. It was integrating a new system. So once the management saw that and saw that we were putting in a platform for the future and the cost, the ongoing costs of that, they were bought into it easily. Even knowing that the features we're implementing now is the same features we had in our existing systems, but we've set the structure for the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question about the customer pain point that you brought up, about manually retrieving a log code and pasting and still being viewed as cumbersome. Is there a reason why you have not gone down the path of having a management system automatically call back to your IT systems to automate this?
Not all customer equipment is connected to the cloud. It's behind their firewalls. They won't sign up for it.
Thank you.
We don't have a solution that hits across the board.
Got it. Thanks.
And it was also potentially, even for those, it's potentially more back and forth complexity we weren't ready to handle yet. So you need a solution for both.
Any other questions?
2 questions. One is, how many software versions, products do you have? Just like number of SKUs for the software side?
For Eclipse, it was 506. CTR was 181, and the new WTM product is a lower cost radio, and it was less than 15. So there's been a lot of work to streamline that down and fewer SKUs. But to keep in mind, so capacity of radios, how much traffic's going across, the mindset shifted. The older SKUs might have been sized, here's 50 megabits, 100, 200, 500,000, right? And it was not cumulative. Now you would just order in cumulative 50 megabits, and if you need 500, you order 10 of them. So a little bit of shift in how you structure the product SKUs made a difference.
And how long did it take to implement from initial commitment?
I think we signed about October and implemented around February, the same as a couple others that we heard. We could have done it faster if we'd stuck with the out-of-box interfaces. We chose to go ahead and use the time. The product was developing at the same time as we're developing the license solution, and we had enough time to go ahead and redesign the interfaces as we wanted at the same time. The integration to the manufacturing took a couple months after that. And that included the full automation with our Oracle ERP as well.
You mentioned bulk licensing. Can you tell us more about that?
It's more about bulk consumption of the entitlements. The customers that are rolling out telecommunication systems for the entire state of Oregon, for massive sections of Nigeria, when they go to set those licenses and lock them into particular serial numbers. They don't want to do that one at a time. They want to make the decisions in their planning process and just upload it to the system. So in our older products, they hand us the file and we take care of it. So as we're giving them self-service, we want to give them the freedom to do that there as well.
Anyone else? We're good.
Thank you.